whenever we play, the gym is packed and it's full of black folks. When we on the road, it's us versus them, and we always saw it that way. So, you know, sports was also one of the few ways at the time out of the neighborhood. You know, when I was growing up, you know, today it's just so different. Sometimes I laugh at it because you turn on the TV, you see black folks and folks of color in a variety of different ways. You see prominent careers for black folks, but when I was growing up, we didn't see any of that, and black folks weren't on TV that often. So we really struggled to have the kind of role models. I mean, I grew up at a time when black exploitation films was alive and well. So when we were growing up as young fellas, either you gonna be in sports or you gonna pimp. I mean, as sad as that sounds and as bad as that sounds, that was the two ways out. And I had a lot of friends that they didn't play ball, they was pimping. They was pimping. And I mean, and the black exploitation films was about pimping.
Yeah.
You know, so those were the things that we saw, and those were the things that were in our world. So I chose the basketball route and got into sports, and that became my life. You know, I was balling every day. I tell folks coming out of middle school and high school, man, I balled every single day of my life, rain, snow, or sleet. We was balling because we felt like that was going to be the answer. That was going to be the way out for us. So played at Jefferson, had a great freshman year, sophomore year, junior year. One of the things that happened that supported our ability to play ball was that they built Adams High School. At the time, Jefferson was full, and we was killing folks out there, man. We was winning in a variety of sports. And again, as bad as it sounds, the white establishment, in order to take away from our success at Jefferson, built Adams High School. Now, they will never admit that, but I had real conversations with the powers to be to know that this was a fact. Because you don't build a high school in the area that they built it, where there is no future population. You just don't do that. That doesn't even make sense. But they built it because they wanted to take half the kids out of Jefferson because we were too successful. So they did that, and as a result of that, I got to start in my junior year, because I wouldn't have started had that not occurred. And Adams became pretty prominent in athletics as well. And so we balled and was very successful. I mean, our junior year, we had a very successful run. We had a real struggle with a couple schools. Grant was really good, Benson was good, Washington High School, Adams, and then Jefferson. But in our junior year, playing against Benson, we had an incident that occurred there that kind of just changed everything. We had their rally and our rally ended up in having some words that ended up in a physical fight. And it ended up being an all-out riot at the game at Benson High School. So at the time, again, I laugh about this stuff now, but back then, you know, everybody had naturals. I actually had hair, and I actually had a natural as well. So we had these things we call cake cutters that you kind of fluff your hair out. So they kept us downstairs, but there was folks being brought downstairs that got cake cutter holes in their face, bleeding because it had gotten that bad. The fallout from that was pretty huge. Even though there was two schools fighting, again, this is how race was being dealt with back then. We weren't kicked out of the league, but they changed our games. We could no longer play an evening game ever again. All of our games was at 3:45 so that the community could not show up for our games. Now, we're at Benson, and Benson is fighting too. None of their games gets changed. Only Jefferson gets changed. But the impact of having to deal with that kind of negativity, and we were probably at the time one of the best teams in the state, but dealing with that ongoing and having our games different and having that level of stress, we ended up losing in the playoffs that year, my junior year, to a team, Marshall High School, that we had beaten by 40 points earlier. But just the stress of all of that eventually caught up with us. So we lost that one and didn't make it to state. So after that, we understood that we needed to move our game to another level. So we created this yell called 1-2-3 Crush. And 1-2-3 Crush meant that we wanted to crush every team that we played. The game cannot be close, because if it is close, the referees are going to cheat us, as they tried to on many occasions. And in our senior year, we averaged about 100 points a game. We averaged beating teams by 30, 40 points, and actually won the state championship in my senior year. And all of that, you know, the negativity, the race relations, and all of that was just fuel for me in terms of, again, do you want to be a part of the problem or do you want to be a part of the solution? And it also taught me a lot about what it means to be a champion. The journey that I was on and that our team was on, and all of the things that we went through and all of the things that were necessary for us to eventually be crowned a champion at Memorial Coliseum, with the largest crowd that has ever watched a game in Memorial Coliseum, with an all-black team playing against an all-white team from Eastern Oregon with crew cuts, and in the arena, black folks down around the court, and the rest of the arena being totally white in 1972. It was all about race, and it was all about us versus them. That's how it materialized. So it gave me a lot, it taught me a lot, and it gave me a lot of foundation to build on from that point forward. And all that we do in SEI today stems from some of that then, because as we won that championship, I can remember right outside this building, walking down these streets and having folks come out of their houses at the time and clap as we walk down the street. Because, again, as sad as it may sound, this was like the biggest victory for our entire black community, that Jefferson had won the state championship in 1972 and gave black folks something to cheer about. So it gave us a great sense of pride to have been able to accomplish that in behalf of not only ourselves, but a community, but also what we learned through that process, what I learned through that process was, it still is the foundation of much of what I do today. You know, some of the earlier programs that I was involved with, you know, we talked a little bit about, you know, Matt Dishman and Ray Leary and myself put that program together. I remember Clyde Drexler, you know, an NBA player, came over and was a part of that. I remember Peninsula Park and some of the programming I did there and running Jefferson's gym. But a couple of the other things that I think were impactful, Perry Sport Camp was a big camp that a lot of us as middle schoolers had the opportunity to be a part of. But probably one of the most impactful was the Maurice Lucas involvement clinics that he put on early on, because you know, they were coming off a championship. You know, George Gerving and some of his friends would come into town to be a part of the camps. And it was like one of the first camps that we saw that at least tried to do a little bit more than just the basketball side of it. So I was involved with the Maurice Lucas clinics and did that for a couple years as well. So all of these camps, I think, gave me some experiences and some knowledge and some background, and was helpful when I thought about what the SEI camps should entail. And the fact that we went so much deeper than just basketball actually comes from all of these experiences I had in the other camps, and designing other camps and listening to other folks who were trying to do camps, to do something new, different, and unique in a way that would be more impactful for the young basketball players, helping them become young, positive men. Well, I think early on with the camps, I didn't have a concept of turning a camp into a full, year-round agency. That's not where we started. The camps were the camps. I was actually working for Portland Public Schools, and part of getting the camps off the ground, part of the reason why it was easier was because I was a part of Portland Public Schools, so I had connections within the districts because we were doing all of our camps in district facilities. So early on, it was about camps and trying to grow the camp. So start out with a senior high school camp, then a junior camp for 9th to 10th graders, then middle school camp. Even back then, we had some young ladies saying, yo, what about us? So then we moved into serving the young ladies as well. So for a while there, it was just about basketball camps and really I don't even like to say basketball camps. I say self-enhancement camps because it was truly much more than basketball. So that's where we started. Now the issue or challenge that came that moved it beyond that and had us beginning to think about something more. We had a lot of gang issues that coming up I-5 from LA, we had kids here that were getting connected. The Crips and the Bloods were alive and well, and we're telling the powers to be that, hey, there are some gang problems here. I think 87, 88, after one of our camps, we had some of our players actually get caught up in the first drive-by shooting. Ray Winston, one of the individuals, I was actually having conversations with him 2 weeks prior to him being murdered on the basketball court. We had started a 2-week program out at Columbia Villa, and that was our first effort to do something beyond just the basketball piece. And Ray lived in Columbia Villa, so I talked to him about, hey man, you need to get out of that and come hang with us. And he said no, and he didn't say no because he didn't want to do it. He said no out of respect because he knew that he could not be involved in the gang activity in Columbia Villa and still live in Columbia Villa. So he said no. A couple of the other individuals in the car, one of them had just won the state basketball championship that year, played for Grant High School, was a D1 prospect. He gets in the car with a few of his friends. They're drinking Old English 800 and smoking weed. And they decide, and they're part of the blood set. At least that's what they identified with. So they decide to ride out to Columbia Villa, ride by the court and just fire automatic weapons. And Ray Winston is on the court. Now, it's almost like you just question why they did that. But the fact that you riding down the street in a car and just shoot and just happen to hit Ray Winston in the head and kill him, murder him. Because it wasn't like they had target practice, so these guys can't even shoot. So it just happens that way. So after that occurred, then obviously the whole city stopped because that's the first drive-by shooting on record here. And we, from a programmatic standpoint, are saying what we're doing can make a difference, and if we get more money, we're willing to do that. So after that, the city came up with some resources. I, at the time, was working for Portland Public, so I was able to convince them to bring some money to the table with the city's money, and we were able to then develop a full year-round effort servicing like 3 middle schools and Jefferson High School at the time with those resources, and that was really the foundation of SEI, the agency, and certainly we weren't an agency at that point, but it was the first opportunity for me to actually leave Portland Public. My running partner, Ray Leary, who was involved with the Urban League, was willing to leave that position and bring some of the connections that he had to the table. Gerald Deloney, who was working for the city, I think at the time, interestingly enough, helped us put some things together and was on the other side of the money trail. It's kind of interesting that when we first got the dollars to go year round, the city provided a $250,000 grant. I always remember Gerald bringing that check over, and he dropped it in the mailbox, and I knew the money was supposed to come, and I was calling him saying, "Hey man, what happened to the money?" He said, "Well, I put it in your mailbox." I said, "Wow, you dropped a $250,000 check in the mailbox, huh?" And for us at the time, I mean, that's like more like 2.5 million. I mean, $250,000 at the time was a hell of a lot of money. And he just dropped it in the mailbox. I kind of always laugh at that, but he was very instrumental. Ray Leary was very instrumental as we made that transition. And I've talked about some of the other folks, Ricky Allen, Joy DeGrue, who were a part of that initial 4 to get a summer program and move it to a full year-round program.